Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hunterville. In last week's episode, we reconstructed the central train station for the city and made some significant changes in destroying a big chunk of the city. And in today's episode, we're going to continue working around that train station, and one thing we do is construct an underground train station, which is quite a complex build, and then fill in some areas around the train station. So the reason I wanted to build an underground train station was because there are currently no train lines sort of heading right through the center of the city and out to the areas south of the river. And my thinking was that this could be a brand new, recently constructed line, like in the past few years within Hunterville's history. And this just provides an extra connection and extra public transport capacity through the center of the city. With one of the main inspirations for this build being the currently under construction City Rail Link tunnels in Auckland. So the location of this station is slightly away from the main train station, and it's situated on the opposite side of the road. It'll be connected up by some underground tunnels and things, which for in-game purposes I've used the invisible pedestrian paths and sunk them underneath the ground. But it's also situated here because I can actually get down there to take cinematic shots and things, and it was actually easier to build than say building it under the road, which in some ways might have been more realistic, as you could excavate out the road and not impact any private properties or anything to build this underground train station and everything. But I decided not to do that, and also it might make sense because it's a main arterial road, the road that runs between the train station and this location, so perhaps when they were deciding to build this underground station they decided not to do that, so that there was somewhere for the traffic to go when coming from the north of the city into the centre, and then heading out north in the peak PM rush hour or whatever. Anyway, onto the actual build. We've placed down the station platforms, and instead of using an island platform, I decided to use two single one-sided ones and fill in the space in between them with the prop that sort of is the same as the station platforms. And I just wanted to do this as I wanted more space for the actual platforms themselves to fit chairs and things down here for people waiting. And what I'm doing now is putting a decal on the side of these concrete network walls. What I did here was I rotated the decal by 90 degrees using procedural objects, and instead of projecting onto the ground, it then projects onto any 90 degree surface, or hopefully you get the idea anyway. And I just decided to do that to give the station a bit more texture and everything, and sort of base this off some of the designs that were shown for Aotea Station in Auckland. I think there's a new name for that now, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. Anyway, here I'm also just placing down these escalators. These steps are animated, so hence why there's so many different props being placed here. And then again, they don't look absolutely perfect when they're animating anyway, but oh well. It makes the place look a little bit alive, and obviously when this is all functional, there'll hopefully be a lot of people down here actually using the trains and things. But there probably won't be for a while, as the city isn't really that big and there's not really any other train stations out here apart from just some ones that I placed down later just to test out to see how things were running. Anyway, we've basically got the frame of the station done, and now just going through and placing down the ceiling, and then we'll go through and place a whole lot of props down, including these columns, so that the structure of the train station actually makes sense as to what's supporting it. And just lining this up is always a little bit tricky. But yeah, you've got this big open space where the escalators go up, and I'm not sure if I showed it in the time lapse previously, but I also put a lift on like either side, so there's 2 lifts in total for people that would either prefer to take the lift or need to take the lift because they can't use an escalator to get up. But yeah, anyway, just going through and sort of finishing off the ceiling, and then I put another ceiling over top of this to act as like the proper roof of the place, and just use certain camera angles to not highlight the fact that there's just this big empty open void between like on the second floor of the train station and the concourse area. And also with this lighting, I was having a bit of trouble because the lights were simply just too bright and they were really sort of overpowering, like you can see here. I think in the end I ended up like sort of shifting them up like half a floor or something, or doing something weird with them anyway, and just putting a few benches in for people that are waiting for the train, give them somewhere to sit around and everything. And I think this is the final bit of this section of the episode, just placing this roof on, and that's that. So there weren't really many cinematics that I could take for the underground station, which is kind of disappointing given the amount of time that I spent trying to create it, because it was a lot more complex than, say, the 6 or so minutes of time-lapse that were just shown before. Anyway, now we're working on the area directly above the sunken station. It's like directly below that gravel part there and everything. And I wanted to keep those old buildings along that side street as they like haven't been touched by any of the construction or anything, and were there for, say, like since the early to mid 1900s sort of thing. And then the gravel area is part of the area that would have been excavated to construct the train station, and here's a little entrance down into it. And just this general area, I wanted there to be like a lot of new construction going on, both stuff being rebuilt over where the excavation happened for the train station, but also just general new construction, as the area would be a little bit more desirable as it's serviced even better by public transport. And with that station entrance, I just made like a black cube to sort of block off the entry and make it look like it goes somewhere, but also make it not show any of the sort of ugly things going on under the ground here. And then also resize some dirt decals carefully with procedural objects to fit the space that they fit into. And another thing with this area is I wanted to keep some open space just sort of to reflect what was here, which was like a big park between the under construction convention centre and the old train station. And also just because the city kind of lacks a lot of open space in this general area. I mean, you've got the big town square, which I will one day actually like build and put trees in there and stuff. But other than that, there's not really any public open spaces around the place. And here I tried to basically hand make an entire building just using procedural objects, and have it so that it's got like a red X pattern that's like the bracing on the walls and stuff, and also some sort of like architectural element as well. And then just using the concrete columns as the columns for the building. This was a lot of procedural objects. I don't know whether I'd ever do this again, because it probably slows down my loading times and things, but looks okay. I had another issue with this building that I decided to use for the windows inside of this got updated. So as you see me here, I'm like pressing it down into something small so that it only shows the windows, but this model was updated by the person that published it, and then I don't exactly know the reasoning, but kind of understand why this would be a thing, but the procedural object that had been modified reset. I guess because like the model had changed and I didn't know what to do. So I had to go back in just recently and sort of replace the building that I used with the same building but slightly updated model. I had to replace that just to get the windows and things looking alright again. And I think now I'm up to... now I'm working on this park area, and I just wanted to create like a path down the center, and then there's like a water fountain that I put in here in a second. I imagine this park would just be here for like providing some open space. I think I don't put trees in here, so it wouldn't really be a good place to sit and eat your lunch. Or at least not in the summertime, because you'd be exposed to the sun, which would give you sunburn and everything. Anyway, here I'm working on this water fountain and just using this concrete wall as kind of the edge of it. And then I think I placed down like a ploppable surface in this gap somewhere to try and obviously not show all the way through to the train station part, but yeah. I was going to say this would give you a good idea of where the underground train station is relative to things, but you can't really see much around it to really get a reference of what's here. Anyway, I just changed the color of the walls as well, so it's a bit more sort of darker and looks quite modern and not just like plain old concrete. And then putting these tile decals down as well, and this water prop over top of them. And then I think we're going to move on to working on the small sort of shared space street that runs along the front of the under construction convention centre. Oh, and I also placed down these like concrete benches for people to sit on if they do decide to come in this park and eat their lunch or just hang out or whatever. And yeah, here's this little like sort of shared street. Just because it's at the same level as the footpath, I imagine there wouldn't be much traffic along there, and it might be for some like taxi drop-offs or something. And just putting some trees in these planters, and then you would have sort of seen there with the camera going around, there's that empty space that was created when I shifted a chunk of the city across a couple of tiles when I was building the train station, just to give more space. And now we're filling this space up with some older buildings to start off with. I kind of felt like really unsure of what to do with this space, because when I moved that construction site, it just felt a little bit awkward because the construction site was designed to fit the space at the time, and I did that over 2 years ago and it was quite a complex build, so really didn't want to mess with that. Anyway, here just sort of filling in the rest of the area with some slightly more modern buildings along this end. I imagine the ones back further towards that main road might have been constructed first as the like center of the city was like slowly expanding. And then just sort of, I had this little awkward space here, so I was just filling it in with some planters and things. A little bit of greenery, and then that's pretty much it for this area. Then we're going to move on to a different part. So now we're moving on to the final part of the episode and filling in some empty space to the north of the train station, as I deleted a whole lot of stuff in this area in the last episode and am just getting around to sort of replacing things and making things better. And this building here, I imagine it would be like the central police station for the city, even though there's like no signage to indicate that. But that can be added in the future, and just working on this parking lot and a little retaining wall. But if you're enjoying this episode so far, don't forget to leave a like and leave a comment of your thoughts on this episode and anything that I could work on in the future. I know that not everything I've built in this episode is perfect, so I'm always trying to like balance the sort of trade-off between getting the city built relatively quickly and adding as much detail as possible, which those things are kind of exclusive, because if you're going to do like hyper detailing, then it's going to take a long time and you're not really going to get the city built very fast. And speaking of hyper detailing, I guess this kind of counts, making a custom parking lot here, and I've just placed down the columns as sort of the outline of where it'll go. And you've got like one row in the middle, and then off to the left, the two close ones are where the ramps will be between the different floors. And I was just using the surface network as kind of like the base for the parking building and like the surface that people drive on, and keeping it like perfectly flat by aligning the heights of each node. This was quite a complex little build. I think I'd done one previous custom parking lot like this in a different city that I haven't published on YouTube. But this technique actually comes from the one and only CityWalk City Wall. He made a tutorial a long time ago now. I think that video has been taken off YouTube for I don't know what reason, probably just he wasn't proud of the quality of that video, because it was one of his very early ones. But sort of the basis of this technique is that you use these prefab construction props, the slabs and the columns, to sort of create the structure, and then you use an asset called the raisable parking lots to create the parking lots on each floor, and they actually function. Like you can see there's cars parked in there, and that functions for every floor. It's not just like one place functions at one height or anything like that. And like if you use the parking lot roads ones, then they need to be on the parking lot roads, and can basically therefore only be placed on like a single level. So this is the way around that. And here I'm just like sort of topping off what I imagine would be like the shaft for the elevators and also a stairwell, and then working on this part, which is basically the ramps. One goes up and one goes down. I'm not sure if I put line markings or anything on to indicate which direction, but yeah, just it functions as it should. Oh yeah, I did put little arrows on. But yeah, this is something that I kind of want to do more often, create these custom parking lots. In a couple episodes time, there's a big one that I create that's a very custom shape that basically destroyed my motivation for playing this game for a solid few months because of how complex it was. But anyway, here I was just trying to work out how to fill in the rest of this block, mainly with like some older warehouse buildings and that type of thing. But I think I changed that brick sort of like Georgian or Victorian style one because I just felt a little bit out of place and not really fitting with the city that well. And just creating a repco here and a small parking lot, and that's the final thing I do in this episode, is just finish off this little block with a few industrial buildings. So this brings us to the end of the episode, and next week we'll be working on an industrial area as well as some train maintenance facilities. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.